Can a dragon and a human fall in love? Now that question is the premise of this video and part 2 of the video about the Dragon Overlord Crucible. So let's hit the intro and begin. To tell this story properly, we need to step away from Crucible for a few minutes and talk about Linsha Majere. She grew up in the city of Solas, granddaughter to Caramon and Tika Majere, the heroes of the lands, and her parents too were heroes in the Chaos War. The exploits of her parents and her grandparents helped shape her concept of honor and service. When she was 11, her parents sent her out to Goldmoon in the Citadel of Light to learn the power of the heart. Sadly, Linsha did not have much talent in mysticism, nor the ambition to learn it and to become a mystic. She still looked for a way to make her family proud of her, so she finally talked with her reluctant parents and convinced them to allowing her to join the Knights of Solamnia. At the age of 13, she joined the knighthood. Although she was allowed to join the knighthood because of the legacy of her family, she quickly rose within the ranks on her merit and her own courage, her ambition, tenacity, and deep devotion to the principles of honor. And by 20, she entered the Order of the Rose, becoming the first non-Solamnic woman and one of the youngest knights to attain this respective rank. Shortly after becoming a Rose Knight, the Solamnic Council asked her to join the clandestine circle as an undercover agent and spy. This request did not please her, and she felt that this kind of job was demeaning to the principles of the Order of the Rose, and she wouldn't have any opportunity to live up to the expectations of her family. So she went out on a quest of honor to Whitestone Glade in hopes of resolving this moral dilemma. She spent 2 days in prayer to the absent gods, hoping for some sort of response, and when none have arrived because the gods were absent of the world at this time, she even used her mystic talent to reach out to any spirit to give her guidance. However, to no avail, and when she almost passed out of exhaustion, a young knight, a member of the Sword, who had followed her to the Whitestone Glade, filled with jealousy and resentment, he attacked Linsha, trying to strangle her. In desperation, Linsha grabbed a piece of rock and hit him with it, and that immediately renewed her strength, giving her the power to fight him off and restrain him using her mystical powers. This experience with the rock she believes was given to her by the gods, gave her the resolve that the gods are still watching over Krynn, and that she would do whatever the Grandmaster demands of her. Linsha was sent by the clandestine circle to Sanction to be an undercover agent under the leadership of Lady Knight Kareen Thasley. Linsha took on the persona of Lynn of Gateway, a cutthroat and a sellsword, skulking around from tavern to tavern and back alleys gathering information about the Legion of Steel, the Knights of Takesis, Sanction's own government, and in particular, the city's mysterious governor, Lord Hogan Bite. And not surprisingly, as she feared, she soon learned to hate the work that she was doing. And she feared that she will never be able to accomplish anything equal to the achievements of her family. Not only that, if her family saw her now, they would be deeply disappointed in her. A couple years after she arrived in the city, she traveled to the Valley of Crystals with a man named Lonar Hidul, a man she respected and liked. But in a twist of irony, he suspected her of being a Knight of Takesis, and did not believe her claims for being a Knight of the Rose. He attacked her and almost killed her if it wasn't for her grandfather's friend, Gilthanas Kanan, who happened to come along and saved her. The elf at the time was struggling under a madness from a vile poison, mistook her for her grandmother. He and his companion bandaged her wounds up, fed her, and eventually left her to make her own way back to Sanction, with a renewed desire to find some good in her assignment. Several years later, in the Kalkis Mountains, she was attacked by dark knights, but managed to escape due to an unlikely ally, a small female owl with the ability to see the good and evil auras of humans. The owl, Varia, immediately joined Linsha and became inseparable, staying with her through everything. Varia is also a talking owl, and this is a secret that Linsha keeps very close to heart and uses as a huge advantage against her enemies. In the next 9 years, Linsha moved up throughout the ranks in Sanction, eventually joining the city guard. She hated living this lie as an undercover character, but at least as a city guard she could do some good, and it paid much better than being a mercenary. And during this time she developed a growing respect for Lord Bite. In the summer of 419 AC, a ship carrying sailors dead and dying from a mysterious illness entered Sanction Bay. After Linsha defended Lord Bite from a fever-crazed sailor, he elevated her to a squire in the elite governor's guard, and as soon as that happened, the clandestine circle ordered her to find out any misdeeds of the Lord Governor so they can discredit him. She did not approve of this attitude at all. She felt that they need to pay more attention to his successes than his failures, and she had seen how deeply Lord Bite loves the city of Sanction and how much he has done for it. This terrible illness started spreading throughout the city. First throughout the waterfront and the dock area, and then into the city itself. Lord Bite ordered the plague ship to be towed out into the harbor and burnt, and while he supervised it, Linsha manages to save Ian Duran, the captain of the guard, who fell into the water and almost drowned. And also, she met Mika, a mystic healer, who was doing her very best to stop this plague. During the worst days of the plague, Linsha worked with Duran and Mika side by side trying to stop it. She even had a short-lived, passionate affair with Ian Duran. And throughout this time, she also discovered that there was a Skull Knight assassin that had infiltrated the Lord Governor's closest circle. And after Mika was murdered, Linsha put the pieces together that the Knights of Takesis had started this plague in the city to weaken its defenses, and planned to attack the city as soon as the Skull Knight had assassinated Lord Bite. Linsha reported the findings to her commander and was ordered to disregard the threat and stand down. The Solamnic Knights planned to allow Lord Bite to be murdered so they could take over the city. Lord Bite at this time was at the foothills of Mount Thunderborn, using his sorceress abilities to divert a new lava stream from the erupting volcano. Linsha rushed up to help him, save his life, and to her bitter sorrow, she found out that the Skull Knight was Ian Duran. She fought the traitor with all she had on the slopes of the volcano. Linsha was wounded and nearly died in spite of Varia's attempts to help her. They were both saved though by a bronze dragon who emerged from a cliff in the mountain and killed Commander Duran. The dragon then attacked and destroyed a fleet of dark ships that tried to invade Sanction Harbor. Linsha recovering in the governor's palace, and although Lord Bite offered her sanctuary, she refused. And this time she broke the lie that she hated and told him who she was, living up to her family's legacy and courage, and formed a long-lasting friendship with Lord Bite. But unfortunately, the incident forced her to leave Sanction to face an inquiry before the Grand Master of the Solamnic Knights. After the incident in the city of Sanction, she went back to the Knights of Solamnia and had to stand trial for disobeying their orders. In that time, she got sentenced to prison, but thankfully was exonerated and cleared from all charges against her, partly because of the word of the Lord Governor Bite, and the increased pressure of the Dark Knights and the Dragon Overlords weighed in on this decision. The plague that weakened and devastated the population of Sanction forced the Lord Governor to ask for aid from the Solamnic Knights, as his forces were not strong enough to stand up to the Dark Knights. One of his terms for this alliance was the release of Linsha from prison. After her release, Linsha is sent to the missing city as a punishment in sorts. It is the southernmost outpost of the Solamnic Knights, on the edge of the South Korean Sea. She is the third in command of the Solamnic Circle in the missing city, serving under Sir Baron Uthmarok. And during her first year, she managed to befriend the Dragon Overlord and protector of the city and the entire region, the brass dragon Aista. Now Aista was the only true dragon overlord of the Metallic clan. The dragon was over 300 feet long and powerful as any of the other dragon overlords. Linsha also established ties with the Legion of Steel and organized her own spy network in the city to keep her informed of any occurrence deviating from the city's daily life. After a couple of years, Linsha started to feel that something wasn't quite right in the missing city. Something was going on in the shadows. that made her mental alarms go off, but no one actually listened to her warnings. Just before the Midsummer Festival of the year 421 AC, 3 of Aista's brass companions disappeared, and the Dragon Overlord feared for their safety, so she took Linsha with her and she paid a visit to their neighbor, a blue dragon overlord called Thunder, that Aista actually took territory away from him, and Thunder was never happy about it. The blue dragon had appeared to be building an army, and both Linsha and Aista were not happy with this discovery, and they were very concerned to the well-being of their city. And another amazing thing happened here. On their way back, Aista shows Linsha a clutch of brass dragon eggs that have been laid there by Puristine, one of the Dragon Overlord's companions and friends, and she asks Linsha to make a vow always to protect these dragon eggs. Linsha, thinking that the brass overlord and her minions are powerful enough that nothing could really happen to them, made the vow gladly, just to ease the concerns of the Dragon Overlord. The next day, Aista called a meeting between the city councilors, the Legion of Steel, and the Knights of Solamnia, warning them of the danger that is coming from Thunder. But on their way back from this meeting, all parties were caught in a storm that swept across the entirety of the continent of Ansalon. We know this storm as the beginning of the War of the Souls, but for the missing city, this storm marked disaster. During the storms, the Solamnics attempted to find shelter, and unknown assassins had ambushed them, killing everyone except for Linsha, who was left unconscious and bloody with a knife in her hand. The city was devastated by the storm, but by morning it was gone, and the slaughter of the knights was discovered. Sir Remick, now the leader of the Solamnic Circle, who never trusted Linsha, blamed her for the death of the escorts and charged her with the murder of Sir Merrick, immediately throwing her in prison and sentencing her to death. Varia was out flying when all of this happened, and she noticed a group of ships just off the shore from the missing city. Thinking that these guys are here to lay waste to the city, she went back to warn Linsha and found out that she was in prison. And worse yet, that the Dragon Overlord Aista was missing. Frantic, Varia leaves the missing city, flying to Sanction to seek the help of the Bronze Dragon Crucible. After a daring escape from prison, just before her execution, Linsha doesn't leave the city. Instead, she goes to the Dragon's Palace looking for Aista to see what happened to her. And in the tunnels underneath the city, Linsha learns a terrifying truth. The Dragon Overlord Aista was murdered, killed by a devastating weapon called an abyssal lance. And as she discovers this, the Dragon Overlord Thunder with his forces attacks the city from land, and a Tamarok fleet attacks the city from sea. Thunder destroys the Solamnic fortress, while the brutes invade the city itself. Only a few of the knights survive the destruction, including Sir Remick. Crucible arrived during the battle, fighting both Thunder and the brutes. His wings were damaged so he could not fly. Linsha and the surviving defenders managed to escape under the city, where they discovered to their horror that the mother of the dragon eggs was dead and the eggs themselves were missing. Linsha then vows to save the eggs and kill Thunder. Her and Crucible decide to find the weapon that managed to kill the dragons, and they discovered that the brutes, the Tamarok, had an abyssal lance, a black variation on the Dragonlance, and it kills whatever it penetrates. After a covert operation, they managed to steal the lance, lure Thunder into the tunnels, and kill him there. Unfortunately, the brutes were able to both steal the eggs and conquer the city. Now, all of these incidences are the reason why Crucible was not in the city of Sanction when Mina's forces attacked and conquered it. He was missing in action because he was helping Linsha. As the War of the Souls was raging throughout Ansalon, a few months after the attack on the missing city, Crucible felt healed enough to fly back to Sanction. Although he worried for Linsha, he still had to go back to the city that he loved and protected. Now sadly, after he left, the Tamarok set a trap for Linsha, allowing her to find out that the dragon eggs were returned to the cavern where her mother laid them. Linsha then went to that cavern and fell into the trap, being captured by the Tamaroks. Varia again flew out to Sanction and asking Crucible for help, and the dragon had to decide between the city that was slipping out of his grasp anyway and the human woman that he loved. Crucible chooses Linsha and flies back to the missing city, trying to free her from her prison, but instead finds himself captured due to a piece of the abyssal lance broken off and stuck in his body. The brutes then force him to cooperate with them, using him as a weapon against the people of the missing city, telling Crucible that if he does not help them, telling him that they would kill Linsha and then they will kill him if he does not cooperate. Sir Hugh and a few other of the city's surviving defenders managed to rescue Linsha, and the small force fled north to the Duntolic tribes. The army of the brutes then left the missing city, taking the prisoners and Crucible with them, and marched after them, intending to conquer the entire northern and central plains of dust, and wipe out anyone that stood in their way. Linsha and all of her companions, they meet underneath the grandfather tree, a sacred tree to all of the tribes that live in the area. There she receives a vision from Aista, and she is given 2 of the leaves of the sacred tree. Sir Remick, the knight that accused her of murder, came also, bearing a message from the warlord of the Tamarack. He lures Linsha out into the open to talk with the Tamaracks, but the brutes betray them, taking Linsha hostage. Finally, Sir Remick realizes his mistake, that he's been duped by the Tamaracks all along. He challenges the warlord for a duel, and in a funny twist of luck, he manages to kill the man. And after that, a new warlord stands forward, and to everybody's horror and surprise, it is one of Linsha's closest friends from the missing city, Lanther, the Legion of Steel spy who saved her from the Knights of Solamnia when they tried to execute her. The brutes and the combined forces of the missing city and the Duntolic tribes meet in a pitched battle along the Red Rose River. Many people die in this battle, but Linsha is rescued during the battle by a small force of horsemen and centaurs. She manages to find Crucible in the middle of the fighting, and using the 2 leaves from the grandfather tree, she removes the piece of the abyssal lance that is stuck in him, freeing him from his captivity. And this is where Crucible's human form is revealed to Linsha, and she finally figures out that Crucible and Lord Bite are one and the same. This infuriates Linsha. She feels hurt and betrayed from all sides. She doesn't flee the battle with the rest of the people, and she gets captured by Lanther and is taken back to the missing city, where she is given a choice: marrying Lanther and sailing to their homelands, or rotting away and dying in the slave pens. By now, Linsha felt that she had nothing left to live for, except for her vow to Aista to guard the eggs, so she agrees to the marriage proposal if Lanther would give her the dragon eggs as her gift, and he of course agrees. While Linsha was on the Isle of the Brutes, she discovers a young brass dragon named Sirenfell, who had been captured and tortured by Kina Priest, and to her horror, she also witnessed the destruction of one of the eggs that she was sworn to protect. She manages to make a mental connection with Sirenfell, and swore to help the young brass escape if he would take her with him. On her wedding night, she drugs Lanther, and with the help of 2 other servants, they free Sirenfell and escape the island. But sadly, due to the amount of torture that the young brass dragon went through, he couldn't make it back to the mainland, and he died in the open ocean, leaving Linsha and Celista, the slave that helped her, stranded. Thankfully for both of them, Varia and Crucible managed to find them in the middle of the ocean and return them to the Plains of Dust. With the help of the Legion of Steel and a few of the rescued prisoners, Linsha manages to steal the eggs away from the Tamarack, and they flee into the plains. Now Linsha started to worry about the eggs, as they appeared to be close to hatching. But Aista promised her that they still had about 60 to 70 years before that should happen. Crucible then took the eggs to an extinct volcano on the edge of Aista's realm. while Linsha was trying to lure the Tamaraks after them. Lanther sadly did not take the bait. He learned of the deception and went after the eggs instead of going after Linsha's forces. He found the volcano and managed to wound Crucible with the abyssal lance once more, and was about to steal the eggs when Linsha found him. They battled over the nest, while the forces of good and evil fought in the valley below. And at the same time, the gods found the world that Takisis has stolen and have returned in all their glory. Linsha finally manages to defeat Lanther, saving the hatching dragonettes and healing Crucible. While this is happening, Lanther then gets up trying to attack Linsha from behind, but the dragonettes kill Lanther instead. When the battle was over, Crucible, Linsha, and the dragonettes and Sir Ho traveled to Sandscript Island and Castle Oathwinster, needing to report this whole incident to the Solamnic High Council. After hearing her story, the council decreed that Linsha will be moved from active duty and be made a knight in exile. She was ordered to continue and protect the dragonettes until they were old enough to protect themselves, and she had to maintain her own sense of honor, which to all of that she willingly agreed. On the way back from Sandscript Island, Linsha and Crucible get married. And now, after the War of the Souls, they both live together in Sanction as Lord Bite and Linsha Majere, together with 8 brass dragonettes that they are protecting. When they return back to the city, the Lord Governor managed to take control once again of the city, and also the volcanoes surrounding it. Crucible and Linsha know that their relationship is not going to be an easy one. Even with their friendship and passionate love, he is still a dragon and will outlive her by a millennia at least. And they also know that their lives could change in a heartbeat. So for now they are content with the care of the brass dragonettes and with the love they have for each other. Now I hope you enjoyed the full story of Linsha and Crucible. If you guys are interested in hearing the complete story of Linsha Majere, let me know and I might even do that in the future. This was a 2-part video that was intended on being a 1-part, but it just got too long, so I thank you all for your patience. Have a great day and we'll see you in the next one.